Welcome to Crash Course Injury Law with Joe Ghabour.
Welcome back to Crash Course Injury Law with Joe Ghabour, founder of Ghabour Law. Joseph is a personal injury attorney licensed in New Jersey, New York, and Florida who helps injured workers understand their rights, avoid common mistakes, and get the medical care and wage benefits they're entitled to under New Jersey law. I'm Leanne Lyon, and today we're talking about how workers' compensation really works and what people need to know right after getting hurt on the job. Joe, can you explain the basic purpose of workers' compensation in New Jersey and what protections it's supposed to provide for injured employees?
Of course. So workers' compensation in New Jersey is a no-fault system. And what that means is if you're hurt on the job, you're entitled to benefits, even if the accident wasn't your employer's fault. The system ensures that injured workers receive necessary medical treatment, receive temporary monetary wages while they're out of work, permanent or temporary disability benefits if the injury causes lasting damage, and death benefits for dependents in fatal cases. In exchange, however, employees generally cannot sue their employer for pain and suffering. And of course, the whole point is the goal behind it is to make sure the worker gets guaranteed benefits without having to prove negligence. In short, the system is designed to get the worker back to work after the appropriate medical treatment is rendered.
So, what are the first steps someone should take after getting hurt at work, especially if they're unsure whether the injury is serious?
Well, the first thing is you must report the injury right away. Even if it seems minor, you must notify your immediate supervisor as soon as possible so that it can be documented. Once it's reported, the employer then must notify the insurance carrier and must provide medical treatment as necessary. Reporting early protects your rights and prevents disputes later about whether the injury was work-related.
So, how minor could we be talking about?
Honestly, any injury of any sort can be deemed a workers' compensation matter. Now, of course, compensation, treatment, temporary wages, they're all going to be reliant on what type of injury you've sustained and how serious. The more serious, the more likely you are to be taken out of work and to have to go to the doctors for a specific period of time. Versus if it's something very minor, then it's probably not going to take you out of work. They may still get you the medical treatment just to make sure you're okay. But other than that, you're going to go back to work. And workers' compensation in New Jersey is based upon a system of permanency. So you get additional compensation only if you've sustained a permanent injury of some sort.
So, many workers are surprised to learn that they can't choose their own doctor. Can you explain how authorized medical providers work in New Jersey?
Sure. In New Jersey, sometimes this seems a little weird, but in New Jersey, the employer is the one who selects, or basically not just the employer, but the employer or the insurance carrier. They are the ones who select the treating doctor for work-related injuries. You cannot just go to any doctor if you have a workers' compensation matter and you need to get treatment. If you go to your own doctor without authorization, except of course in emergencies, but if you go to your own doctor without the authorization of the insurance company may not pay the bill, and you may not be able to use that later on to show what injuries you've sustained. So it's very important that you go to only authorized treating physicians as authorized by the workers' compensation company. Employers are obligated to provide reasonable and necessary medical treatment, but they do control where that treatment takes place.
Now, we're talking about New Jersey today, but you also practice in other states. Is that different than other states?
Generally speaking, it's about the same, except in other states, you may be able to get your own treating physician that you pick yourself. So one of the bigger differences between New Jersey and a lot of other states is that who dictates where you treat. New Jersey is very, very adamant about the fact that the employer is the one who dictates where you treat, which, by the way, has its good and its bad.
Sure. What are some of the most common mistakes that injured workers make early in the process that can affect their benefits?
Common mistakes include not reporting the injury, waiting too long to report the injury, missing medical appointments, going to unauthorized medical doctors, like we just said,
Mhm.
failing to follow the authorized doctor's instructions. And another big mistake is minimizing symptoms. A lot of times we like to think that we're okay, even though we may not be, and we try to push through. But don't minimize your symptoms. If you have an injury, get it checked out and get the treatment as necessary. Because a lot of times when you overlook an injury and then you get injured again, or something else happens that doesn't really rise up to the level of injury, but causes you to feel more pain in that, say, body part, then you're going to have a problem showing that this was related to the accident at work.
So, how does temporary disability pay work, and what should someone expect if they're unable to return to their job right away?
Okay. So, if you can't work for more than 7 days, you qualify for temporary disability benefits. And this is through workers' compensation, obviously. These payments are typically 70% of your average weekly wage, subject to the statewide limits, which every year varies. A schedule comes out every year that tells you what's the maximum benefit that you're entitled to. So you get 70% of your weekly average weekly wages up to the statewide limit. And the benefits continue until you return to work or you reach what's called maximum medical improvement. Now, that's a very important term there, maximum medical improvement, or MMI, because it means that the doctor has released you from treatment and your condition has stabilized.
When an injury becomes long term, what determines whether someone is considered partially or permanently disabled under New Jersey's workman's comp?
So once the injured worker is treated and discharged from treatment by the authorized treating physician, they are sent to doctors to determine permanency. If an injury causes lasting impairment, and this is really how workers' compensation works, there are two types of disability benefits that they can qualify for. One is permanent partial disability, which applies when someone is permanently injured but can still work in some capacity. And the other is permanent total disability, which applies when the injured worker cannot return to any gainful employment. These benefits may continue long term if total disability continues after the initial term.
So, what typically causes disputes in workers' comp cases, and how are those disagreements resolved if the worker and insurance company don't see eye to eye?
Well, disputes often involve whether the injury was work related or not. So that's issue number one. Other disputes are, whether treatment was necessary or whether any treatment is necessary. And of course, the last dispute usually occurs over the issue of permanent disability. What's the level of permanent disability? So once an injured worker gets treated and then gets discharged under maximum medical improvement, they are sent to doctors to determine permanency, the percentage of permanency to whatever body part was injured as a result of the accident at work. If disagreements arise as to the numbers, and they always do, the insurance company's doctors are always going to come at a very low permanency rate, where the petitioner, the injured worker's doctor, is going to come in at a higher rate. And if it can't be sorted out between both parties, then a judge is going to have to decide that, and that's through a trial. It's not necessarily the same type of trial in a civil case, but it's the same general idea. It's a trial before an administrative judge or an administrative workers' compensation judge who determines what the permanency amount is. And that's why it's very, very important to document everything from the beginning until the date of trial. Document the accident, any witnesses, any treatments that may be rendered by any authorized physician. Document, document, document.
And as you said earlier, don't minimize, right?
Definitely do not minimize. If something hurts, you have to document it.
Does filing a workers' compensation claim affect someone's job status? And what protections exist to prevent retaliation?
It's a very, very good question, and I get asked that question often. It's unlawful in New Jersey for any employer to discharge or to discriminate against an employee for filing or attempting to file a workers' compensation claim. So very simply, if you file a workers' compensation claim and the employer terminates you as a result of you filing that claim, it opens up that employer to a whole world of problems. But workers are legally protected from retaliation in New Jersey. And again, any employer that retaliates is going to subject themselves to a lot of problems because it can turn into unlawful termination, retaliation. It could turn into a whole world of problems for the employer.
As we wrap up here today, and for someone who feels overwhelmed, maybe confused or unsure about whether they handled things correctly, what is the safest way to get clarity about their rights and their benefits?
The safest step is to seek guidance early. It's important to speak with an experienced workers' compensation attorney to understand your rights and your obligations. Because workers' compensation is a type of injury law, we do not get paid unless we are successful. So you have nothing to lose by consulting with an attorney.
Well, that is it for today's episode of Crash Course Injury Law with Joe Ghabour. To learn more about workers' compensation, medical benefits, and what to do after an on-the-job injury, visit GhabourLaw.com. You'll find clear guidance to help you protect your rights every step of the way. Thanks for listening, and remember to like, subscribe to the show, and leave a review if you found this episode helpful. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.